Hello, my name is Chaz Kayato and welcome back to my channel. The topic of discussion today is the new ACT. So for you out there watching, if you're unsure of what exactly I'm talking about, there are two major standardized tests in the United States. One is the SAT and one is the ACT. Now the SAT is found in the majority of states, ACT is not, but it's still a major test that colleges will look at in terms of figuring out if a student should be accepted into that school or not. Particularly where I'm from, which is Louisiana, the ACT is the test that's used for all of the state colleges to determine whether they should accept an incoming student or not. So the ACT is has recently gone under some changes. And this coming school year, which is the 2025-2026 school year, is going to be when those changes are fully implemented. And it's important for teachers to understand that these changes have happened so that they can better prepare their students. So there was some pilot programs in the spring that started some of these changes, but starting with the September ACT, these changes are going to be fully implemented. So if you have a student that is going to take the ACT, just make sure they understand some of these changes. So one of the major changes is that there is no longer a requirement to take the science portion of the ACT for your composite score, which means your composite score will now just be English, math, and reading. So these are going to be the the three that that make up the composite score. It used to be that science was in there as well, but that has been taken out. So that is somewhat of a, well, let me put it this way. Even though that's no longer a requirement for the composite score, students should know that they should still look and consider taking the science portion because of the fact that many colleges are still going to look to see what the student scored on that science portion. Now, it might not be considered for every college, but if a student is looking to go into a STEM degree, they will most likely need to have taken that science portion. So, this is something that I hear from the students. Oh, I can't believe they're making the science portion not required next year. Just understand that it's not required, but because of the fact that it's not required, it's almost even more incentive for students to take it, because there's no pressure necessarily if you do poorly in terms of what your composite score is going to be, but you still may need that score if you're going into any type of STEM field. So it's very, very important for students to understand that. Now, there's also going to be some changes to the number of questions and the time that the test is being taken. So because technically the science portion is no longer required, this does cut down on the amount of time the three tests, or just the composite test, will take. I think that's under 2 hours now. Once again, that doesn't include science, but we should really be thinking about including science. But even with the science, I believe it's only around 2.5 hours, which I can remember when I was in high school, you could expect maybe more than 3 hours to take the ACT. And so there still is a writing portion, but very, very few schools require a writing portion. So that, really, if students are considering the writing portion, they really just need to figure out, are they planning on applying to any school that will have any type of interest in their score in writing, because otherwise that probably will be unnecessary. So there's, like I said, changes to the number of changes to the number of questions on the ACT. And students need to understand something very important. The difficulty of the entirety of the ACT is not changing. So I know I've also heard students say, oh, there's going to be less math questions. The students that are going to take it next year are so lucky. They don't have to take, well, let me assure you, the questions that are going to be asked, yes, there are going to be less math questions and more time to do those questions, but the flip side of that is the difficulty will actually be raised to offset the fact that there's more time and less questions. So the difficulty of the questions, a lot of the easier junior high level questions, many of those are going to be taken out. So the average difficulty goes up. But once again, we're talking about offsetting factors here. So you have less questions and more time, but in order to compensate, you can't just do that and keep the questions the same, because that would be a huge advantage over previous groups that have taken it in previous years, right? So in order to do that, the average difficulty of the questions have gone up. So it's just really important for students to understand that yes, there may be more time in some of the tests per question, right? Per question, more time per question. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be easier, because in order to offset, the difficulty of the questions are also going to change too. So it's just really, really important that students understand these changes. Also, it's becoming more and more common to see computer-based ACT. Now, I personally don't enjoy the computer-based ACT over the paper ACT for a number of different reasons. One, especially for the reading sections, I think it's just easier to be able to go back and forth just with your eyes versus having to point and click. I feel like that can be, you can kind of lose your mental map when that happens. Also, I find that I prefer to have all of my math in front of me versus on the computer. There are some people that are going to be the complete opposite. They much more prefer doing the computer-based versus the paper, and that is completely up to the individual. But I do want to point that out, that the experience of taking the paper versus taking the computer-based test is a little different. And so students need to figure out which option may be best for them. Now, I do understand if you're doing school-wide testing, it might not be an option for some students to take computer-based and some students to take paper, and that's completely understandable. But if those students are going to take the ACT on their own, that may be something they want to consider. How do they do with computer-based testing? How do they do with paper-based testing? And then pick the option that is going to be best for them. So lastly, I just want to point out, once again, reiterate that the composite score, so a perfect score is a 36. The composite score still includes the reading section, the math section, and the English section. Just does not include the science section, but the science section should not be ignored. It's still going to be important for many, many schools, especially your higher end schools. You want to tell students to go ahead and plan on taking that. Now, if for some reason the student is dead set on not taking it, just, you might want to have a conversation with them about what is your plan in terms of what you want to study in college. Maybe the science portion is not a requirement. The only thing is, if someone is, only 15, 16, they're taking it, what happens if they change their mind in the next year or two and they don't have a science score? Then they have to try to get that science score on the last 1 or 2 times they've taken it. So those are just things to consider. These changes will be implemented this fall, and so this will be something everyone around the country, doesn't matter which state you're in, everyone around the country will see these new ACT changes. So I just want teachers to be aware of that, so that way you guys can help your students prepare for the ACT. Thank you.